The war broke 1st of September 1939. The first thing the Germans do with the Jews, they congregate them, they concentrate them in ghettos. They haven't decided yet what will be the faith of the Jews. They're just getting them together in the ghettos. In the process of putting the Jews in the ghettos, the Germans are destroying every synagogue they can come across. They were very, very keen of killing rabbis. To be a rabbi at the time was a very dangerous profession. Why killing the rabbis and burning the synagogues and the community houses? It's very simple. When you want to kill the body, you take off the head. So killing the rabbis, which are the leaders of the congregations, and burning the synagogues, which are the central place of the congregation, by doing that, they're breaking the spirit. They broke the spirit of the Jews. This is how they started. Remember, the first part of the war against Jews was a psychological war. To make them as miserable as possible, and therefore susceptible to the German persecution, and susceptible to German orders and regulations later on. Of course, part of the war was religious. Jews have always felt that it's very important to observe Torah, mitzvot, our religion. Very often, the observance of religion was forbidden by the Germans. But still, Jews tried their best to keep mitzvot, study Torah, observe religion. And in the midst of the Holocaust, Jews came up with many halachical questions of how and what to do during this hard time. Some of the questions that rose up, I'll give you a few examples. It happened very often, people were hiding. All kinds of places, in barns, top of the building, on the roof, in the cellar. Very often there were women. Very often they had small children and babies. Babies don't stop crying on the press of a button. Babies sense the danger, so they cry. Imagine the Jews hiding in the cellar. The Germans are looking for Jews in the house, and the baby starts crying. What do you do? Can you shut the baby and take the risk that the baby will supplicate to save as many Jews are in the cellar? Is that allowed? A woman that got pregnant in a camp, or on the way to a camp, is she allowed to terminate the pregnancy, to go through abortion, knowing that if the Nazis find out that she's pregnant, they will definitely kill her? You know, termination of pregnancy is forbidden. Abortion is forbidden. But would that be allowed in such circumstances? What about escaping from a camp? Labor camp, concentration camps. Jews try to escape. It's normal. It should be like that. But those who stayed behind paid the penalty. Because very often, and it happened many times, certain concentration camp. Every time Jews escaped, the Nazis gathered all the workers at the camp and the prisoners and just summarily shot them. For every escaped, from every escaped Jew, they killed another 5 or 10 Jews. Okay. Sobibor, that's the name of the place. Sobibor, it happened very often. Jews worked in the forests around Sobibor. Very few times it happened that Jews escaped to join the partisans, and the commanders of Sobibor gathered the Jews and killed people, on roll call. So is it allowed to escape, knowing that those behind you will pay the price? Are you becoming a partner to murder this way or not? Is it allowed to impersonate as a Christian? Is that allowed? When do you daven the morning service, Shacharit? The morning service has to be done up to a certain time limit, you know that. Well, we go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark. The Jews are marching from the ghetto to the factory. They have no time to put tefillin and daven. Is it allowed to daven early, later, while walking? Some places in the city is supposed to be standing straight. Is it allowed to daven when you walk? Shelo asani aved, that did not make me a slave. Can I say this blessing during the Holocaust when I am a slave? Am I supposed to say this blessing? How do I make meat kosher when I hardly have any salt? All these are questions. And we're raising those questions to demonstrate that despite everything, Jews try to carry on living Jewish life. Jewish life means observance of Torah and mitzvot. Now, when it comes to Pesach, which is the topic of our conversation today, of course, you know, it's even more complicated. If there's any Chag, any festival during the year that takes a lot of preparations and a lot of new actions and making things kosher, making things properly, and buying special stuff, that's Pesach. Even for us today, observing Pesach not so simple, then we have everything on the shelves and the shops. So let's try and look at various issues concerning Pesach and how Jews handled them during the World War II and the Holocaust. The first thing we have to do before Pesach is get ready. The first step of getting ready for Pesach is, some people call it the spring cleaning. Cleaning the house. That was the easiest part of the task because they had so little food. They had so little chametz anyway that getting rid of the chametz was relatively easy and simple. Rabbi Shimon Huberband, born 1909, murdered in Treblinka in 1942, but still, before he was murdered, he left a lot of notes in a hiding place in Warsaw. And the notes were found after the war, so we have some testimonies from him. And he's describing Pesach on the Warsaw Ghetto 1940. About the chametz, he says, young boys ran around the ghetto more than ever throughout the Jewish houses while shouting chametz lisrifa, meaning chametz for burning, give us the chametz, we will burn the chametz for you. So everybody gave them the chametz, but they didn't burn the chametz, they ate it. They were hungry. That's also a kind of burning, getting rid of chametz. And getting rid of the chametz, you also sometimes sell the chametz that you have. So the rabbis found Polish guy who was willing to risk his neck by doing business with the Jews, and they managed to sell the chametz to him. So that was relatively easy, getting rid of chametz. The next thing you need to do is to kasher your vessels for Pesach. You know, you take a big barrel and you put it on fire. You burn the fire. You burn the fire and you boil the water until it's really boiling very strong with a lot of bubbles coming up. It's called in Hebrew Hag'alat Kelim, immersing of vessels in hot water. And that also wasn't that complicated because, well, they had water, they had many barrels, stuff to burn there was not a problem to find. So they managed to immerse the vessels and kosher them for Pesach, which was very important in those days. Because today, if I may use myself as an example, I don't need to kosher anything for Pesach. I have everything done. Everything that I have for the year, I have also for Pesach. So I just swap everything and I don't have to worry about koshering and stuff. Okay, but in those days, did they have double? Like we have today, they didn't have anything extra. They hardly had anything to use on a regular basis. That's why it was very important to facilitate the koshering of the tools and the vessels for Pesach. What you see here is a picture from the Lodge Ghetto. Lodge Ghetto, I'll tell you a few words about it later. You see it's a big pole, wooden pole, and you have this very big barrel, and there must have been some fire burning underneath here, and this is the smoke coming from the smokestack attached. Very, very clever design you must admit. This way this group moved from place to place in order to help people kosher the tools and kosher the vessels. Why not having stationary like we have today? Why moving from place to place? Because it was very difficult for people to find time to go and search for a place to kosher the stuff. Also, to assist people to show that we're still here, we're still alive, we still care about it. So they made a decision over there, this particular group, to move from place to place and help people do this mitzvah, or prepare for the mitzvah of Pesach. A few words about the Lodz ghetto. Everybody knows everything about the Warsaw ghetto. About other ghettos, people know this. So Lodz was the second biggest city in Poland, with 672,000 people. Out of them, 233,000 are Jews. So more than a third. The ghetto was opened in the early 1940 and officially closed by the Germans on the 1st of May 1940. That officially closed means that people couldn't get in and out. They had to stay inside. And it was finished on the summer of 1944. It was the last ghetto for the Germans to close down and ship everybody to concentration camps. Most of the inhabitants of those ghettos were shipped to Chelmno, concentration camps in Chelmno, and to Auschwitz. Chelmno, by the way, is where my family went to. My grandfather's family. The perimeters of the ghetto were about 4 square kilometers. That's not much. In this very tiny space, the Germans squeezed in 165,000 Jews at a certain point. So the conditions in the ghetto were truly, truly horrible. You see, this is the entrance to the ghetto. This is how the ghetto looked from inside one of the main streets, and this is a side street of the ghetto. Of course, while Jews were in ghettos, things were relatively, it's very big relatively, easier. They had some sort of autonomy, self-governed lives. They had the Judenrat to take care of them. They got a little bit of bread. Things got worse as the war progressed, and Jews who were shipped into the concentration camps or forced labor camps, for them Pesach was a whole total different story. So what else do we need for Pesach? We need wine. We have 4 cups of wine that we have to bring. This is one of the mitzvot, one of the commandments we have to fulfill. And we get wine during the war. Sometimes they got wine in the ghetto. They never got wine in concentration camps. What they did is they took tea and put some sugar in it. The rabbis allowed it. They took water and mixed it with jam. Or they had nothing. And they did arba kosot, 4 cups of wine. They did it on little water or soup. For them it was better than nothing. If we mention that, one of the most famous Jewish articles is the Kiddush cup. We have thousands of designs. I mean, look at this beautiful modern thing with flowers. It's very nice. Here's another one from the 1900 year in Germany. What does it say? Shabbat Kodesh, the Holy Sabbath. This is a modern Kiddush cup. It's Hasidic. You know what the difference between this one and that one? And that one. These two are the Kiddush cups on the lake. It's like a lake. Because the Litvaks, when they have a Kiddush, do the Kiddush, they hold the cup like that. The Hasidim, they hold the cup like that, lying on the palm. That is why the Hasidim do a Kiddush cup usually without the leg, just flat. So this is what you need. Everybody has a beautiful Kiddush cup, especially for Pesach, but not in Terezin. Terezin ghetto, the famous ghetto. This is a Kiddush cup that was made there. I have no idea what was it made of, because the picture doesn't say what was it made of. But it's not silver. It's not sterling. It's not even glass. It's probably, I don't know, maybe it's wood. There's no way to know. But this is not as fancy as what you expect to find on a Seder table. And still, they cared enough, whoever did that, cared enough to put the word Pesach on the cup. Very nicely. A few words about Terezin. Terezin was a ghetto in Czechoslovakia, what is today the Czech Republic. On the 24th of November 1940, Reinhard Heydrich, which was the head of the German secret police, ordered to congregate there all the Jews from Czechoslovakia. Later on, during the Holocaust, the Terezin ghetto became the ghetto for the elders, for the prominent war heroes, Jewish German war heroes, decorated artists, famous scholars, and so on. The conditions in the ghetto were horrible, but this ghetto was involved in this famous history farce of the Führer gives a city to the Jews, gives the city as a gift to the Jews. This famous film that the Germans did in order to try and prove that Jewish faith is not so bad in German territories. You all know about this film, I guess, which was made, and it was the worst joke ever, because the true conditions in the ghetto were absolutely shocking. This is the entrance to the ghetto as it looks today. Another important thing we need for the Seder is the Seder plate. Everybody knows about it. It's called in Hebrew Ke'arat Seder, the Seder plate. This is a beautiful Seder plate. You see, it has all the things you need on top, very nicely designed. You have three stories underneath, when the 3 matzot would go. Very beautiful, made of silver. Very nice design, that's what we have today. I particularly like this one, maybe because it's mine. But it's also, look at the design. When I bought it, I looked at it and said it's so nice to have the grape shapes all around. It's so nice. And this is I don't know if you can see, this is a Seder plate from Terezin ghetto. It's made of wood. But still there was an effort to make it look nice. Why? Because in Jewish law, in the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law says that on the night of the Seder you put on your table all your most beautiful vessels. Because you're supposed to feel like you are free, you are a son of a king, and you should have a very good feeling about yourself. And we get good feelings from beautiful things. It's human nature. The greatest problem when you prepare for Pesach is, what's the biggest thing? Matzot. And to get matzot during the war was very difficult. But again, we have certain stages, and at the early stages of the war, the Jews were in the ghettos, and they still had some access to food and materials outside of the ghetto, and they could smuggle in, because some Jews were working outside and coming back in, and they also had some money left, so they could bribe the guards to allow them to bring matzot in, or bring the flour in to make matzot. It was relatively easy. As the war progressed and Jews were sent to concentration camps, it became more and more difficult to have matzot. Here's a story, again from Rabbi Shimon Hubeband from the Warsaw Ghetto about Pesach 1940. I'll read it to you as he wrote it. Throughout the winter, Jews were worried what is going to happen with matzot. Are we going to have matzot this year? On the week before Pesach, it was clear that though the community, the Jewish community, will not give matzot for those little coupons of food that they had, because the coupons were made to get bread, not matzot. So, though it was clear that the Jewish community is not going to handle out matzot, there will be matzot after all. The rabbis decided that kemach min hashuk, means market flour, will be kosher. I'll explain this in a minute. And they made the ovens kosher, and they managed to bake matzot. The price for 1 kilo of matzot moved between 13 to 15 zloty. I have no idea if this was a lot or little, but that was the price. Also, matzah shmura, a special observed matzah, was made too, And there were also matzah mitzvah, a mitzvah matzah, I'll tell you again in a moment what that is, which few rabbis made for themselves, and during the baking of the matzah on Erev Pesach, just before the Chag started, they sang the Hallel prayer as they used to do in the good old times. To explain kemach min hashuk, a market flour. Flour for Pesach has to be harvested and prepared specially for matzah and for nothing else. Okay? Market flour, which you just go to the shop and buy, is not good. Excuse me, not for matzah. But in that particular year, during the Holocaust, Rabbi said, okay, we have no special flour for matzah, so we allow you to use a simple matzah. As they also allowed to use kitniot, the legends. You know, you're not supposed to be using rice and beans and stuff like that. But during the Holocaust, because of the poverty and the starvation, rabbis allowed that summarily without a question. Another thing is the matzah shmura is also a special flour that was kept and watched over for matzah. So it's a higher level of matzah. They managed to get this kind of flour too. And there is something called matzah mitzvah. Matzah mitzvah is the matzah that is baked a few hours before the Pesach starts. It's not a matzah that you go to the shop and you buy a pack. You can do this a month before Pesach, that's not a problem. It's matzah made like 3-4 hours before the night the Seder starts. And this is matzah which will be eaten for the purpose of the mitzvah of eating matzah. That's the highest level. And during the days of the temple, when Jews baked the matzah of Pesach, they sang the Hallel like we sing in synagogue as a sign, as a symbol of happiness that we have this beautiful mitzvah. Baking of matzot at the lodge ghetto. Again, this is relatively early at the war. And here's another picture of the matzot being distributed. And I actually see a smile. Before Pesach 1942, the Jews in the little city named Otbutsk. I don't speak Polish, so Otbutsk. They wanted to bake matzah. So the leaders of the Jewish congregation went to the mayor, Mr. Gadomski, Polish, and asked for permission to bake matzah. He said, no way, I won't let you. And I'm going to check to see that you don't. And he kept his promise. And he sent cops and officers and spies to see exactly if the Jews are baking matzah. And in the little bakery of Mendel, that was his name. The baker was named Mendel. In his little bakery, he was found baking matzah. So those officers destroyed the matzah, destroyed the dough, threw everything out, and they beat Mendel badly, including everybody else that was helping him. That did not stop the Jews in Otbutsk from making matzah. They carried on making matzah. And they used to carry matzah from place to place after they're done in beautiful fabric pockets. In order to hide the fact that they are carrying matzah from place to place, they put them in big suitcases. So it would look like luggage. At that year, in Otbutsk, they celebrated Pesach with just few little candles, so there will be not too much visible light from the windows. And they also did it relatively quickly, so they will not be found, heaven forbid, celebrating Pesach. As the war progressed, things got worse. We said that already. In the ghetto of Kobna, another famous town, there was a Jew named Moshe Galkan. He rescued himself to smuggle a little bit of kemach, a little bit of flour every time into the ghetto before Pesach 1942. And the story of Reb Moshe Galkan, I will say for the last, because this is the spirit of Pesach, and I'll talk about it at the last. As the Germans were losing the war and running away from the concentration camps in Poland, they took the victims with them, the Jews. It's known as the Death March, and became infamous in human history as the Adath the Death March. During the Death March in Austria in 1945, one Jew went to his friend and said, "Do you know today is Pessach? Tonight is Pessach, first night of Pessach." And the other Jew said, "Yeah, of course I do, you know, it's Pessach. How would you like a little matzah? You have matzah?" He says to him, "I don't believe it, you have matzah?" So the man says, "Yeah, I have a little matzah. I managed to carry a little bit of flour in my pocket. And the last time we parked and we stopped to rest because the SS needed the rest, not because we needed the rest, I burnt some fire, I made some fire and I made a little matzah." And he took out this very tiny little matzah, and he gave me a little piece of 3 by 3 centimeters and gave it to eat. Just to remember there's Pesach and eat something of some sort of matzah. It's unbelievable. The Jews did whatever they could, to obtain the things they need for Pesach. What you see here is a postcard sent by Anka Lea Tenenbaum, nothing to do with our Pasha Tenenbaum, I checked with him. Anka Lea Tenenbaum was a prisoner in the Warsaw Ghetto. In 1941, on February, she sent a postcard at the time, because there was no there was still no extermination policy. The Nazis allowed postcards between the ghettos and the world, and she had a sister in Chicago. So she sent a postcard to Chicago, and amongst other things, she writes this in Polish. I can't read it, but it says in my translation, "If you can, please send us matzot for Passover." Of all the things they needed, they cared for matzot. To celebrate the Seder, what else do we need? Karpas, that was easy. Karpas is either potato or celery, depends on your minhag. That they had plenty. Maror, bitter herbs, if you use lettuce or whatever, they had that too. Charoset was difficult. Charoset is made of wine. I should ask my wife exactly how she does it. Wine,
apples, nuts.
That they didn't have. So, but it doesn't have to be made of the nuts, and you can do it with anything sweet. So they took some jam and they used it. So if they could find a little bit of jam, they used that, or they mixed up all kind of things to get charoset. Oh, it was so easy. That wasn't so difficult. So they tried. But you need Haggadah, the book. As the Germans proceeded, and they burned synagogues, and they trashed Jewish homes and burned Jewish books, to find Haggadah was not very simple. And things really got worse by June 1942, the Barbarossa operation, when Hitler invaded Russia, and that is when the policy of extermination began, and the Einsatzgruppen, those killing squads, came tailing the German army, and they started shooting and killing Jews by the tens of thousands, and burying them in stashes. And it was very difficult to imagine celebrating Pesach. It was very difficult also to imagine that the Jews who are deported from place to place and being moved all the time, would remember to carry Haggadah with them. If they had the chance to carry, would take a Bible and a Siddur, Haggadah, for 1 night, 2 nights a year. So to find Haggadah was very rare, and I'm going to show you now a few pictures of Haggadot made and handwritten during the Holocaust. What you see now is Haggadah that Menachem Israel Gantz wrote in the city Nova Masto Nantvarum in Czechoslovakia in 1943. He wrote it while he was hiding in the cellar. He wrote this in his handwriting. By the way, I read the text. There's not a single letter missing. He wrote it from memory. Nothing is missing. This Haggadah was written by Eliezer Dasberg from Netherlands when he was in a Warchok camp in Germany. This was Pesach 1945. This is actually already by the end of the war. But still, Haggadot were not to be found. This is Haggadah, was written by Moshe Musler in the south of France, hiding, Pesach 1943. Musler was a Hebrew teacher for 17 years in Antwerp. And every year, he tells, he taught his students the Haggadah. So this is how Haggadah, imprinted into his memory. So he wrote it down from memory. This is Haggadah written in a hiding place in Drohowicz, very famous Polish shtetl, Drohowicz. 1943, written by Elimelech Landau. Landau and his family were hidden in a house of a Polish family. This family was later recognized as the righteous man of the nations, and they were invited to Yad Vashem to plant a tree in their honor. So he wrote this. Again, I can tell you that I read through, and there's nothing missing. Nothing is missing. I was conducting Seder for many years as a Chazan. I cannot claim that I know the Haggadah by heart. These people do. Again, this is from the Haggadah, including Haggadah, which is the songs at the end that you don't really have to say. It's not part of the traditional text. It has become traditional, but it's not really that you have to say. Even that they remembered how to write, and I think the handwriting is actually very, very unique, very nice. This is Haggadah written on a postcard. They had no other paper. Written by Eliezer Desberg, the guy that we mentioned earlier, and Uri Defau, also written in the German camp of Wartburg. It was written on a postcard, on a paper from a little notebook. Look at that. And again, there's nothing missing in the text. Nothing. A postcard. This is really the very end. Postcard in German. The effort that they invested. Obviously the people who wrote that, they knew the Haggadah by heart. They didn't need it. They did it for the others, not for themselves. The effort that they invested is incredible. Despite the fact that Passover is a Chag which has many mitzvot that we have to observe, we don't say we observe Pesach, we say we celebrate Pesach. Because Pesach is about celebrating. We celebrate our freedom. It's very unimaginable to celebrate freedom in the shadow of gallows, to celebrate freedom in the shadow of gas chambers. But they did. And again, I'm going from the early stages of the war to the later stages. This is Passover Seder 1940 Warsaw Ghetto. You can look at the people, they still look properly dressed. Yes? The table that I can't see that anything special is missing. You see the matzah right in the center. You see the candles, you see glasses, they probably have wine too. And they celebrate Pesach. They were at the time in some mode of euphoria because they heard that the Germans are fighting in Netherlands and in France, and they thought, well, the Germans are not going to be able to fight the whole world, and the war will be soon finished. They were, of course, wrong about that. But they celebrate Pesach with a little bit of a better feeling. But like I said before, I repeat it again because it's true again, as the war progressed, the situation became worse and worse. And the celebrating of Leila Seder, of the night, of the Pesach night, has become more and more difficult. I'll read you a story from a forced labor camp. We don't know the name of the camp, and we don't know who wrote the story. This is a piece of paper found stashed later after the war, and it's been copied, and I'm reading this to you. A few days before Passover, the whole block was humming. It was on the move. People were koshering the vessels, they koshered the oven, they scrubbed the tables, they made everything kosher for Pesach, they washed the doors, the walls, they even washed the ceiling to make it kosher for Pesach in a very long and narrow room, only furnished by those famous prisoners' beds. everybody got together and sat to this very narrow, uncovered, bare tables. We didn't have tablecloth, actually. Guards were posted at the windows, so nobody from the SS will see that we are celebrating anything. And someone else was watching the door. There was no wine to be poured and to be glistening from the glasses. Only one little lamp, illuminated, hardly illuminated, the head of the table. And somehow, we don't have more information than that, but somehow they celebrated Pesach this way. We have another testimony from the labor camp in Janovska. About Janovska, there's a lot to say. If we have time later, I'll tell you more about Janovska. It's one of the relatively unknown camps. It was a forced labor camp, but actually I'll tell you now, which turned into a concentration and extermination camp. But what's very special about this one, that part of the Sonderkommando, the special Jewish workers that worked in that camp, were the Jews of Commando 1005. You know what was Commando 1005? Commando 1005 were the bearers of the great Third Reich secret. You heard about Babi Yar, tens of thousands of Jews murdered in Poland. Before the Nazis started exterminating Jews in gas, they just shot them in trenches and covered everything. As the war progressed and Heinrich Himmler began to think that the Jews might not win the war, he wanted to try and save what he called the German reputation. So they took a group of Jews, badly able, and they forced them to dig up all those mass graves, get every single corpse out of the grave and burn everything in a machine, to smash every bone that hadn't been burned and scatter everything and plant trees on top of that. That was Commando 1005. The commanding officer of the commando was the German named Global, who was an architect in his profession, and he called himself a man of art and a man of culture. The people who worked in Commando 1005 didn't last too long. Psychologically, they were bodily able, very strong people. They were chosen because they were strong. But many of them just got out of their minds. They became crazy from digging up graves of Jews and burning hundreds of thousands of bodies. And the home base, the base camp of the Commando 1005 was in Janovska. Anyway, in Janovska, a story comes as follows. Mudlinger Hazaken, the old Jew named Mudlinger, calls me, the one who's telling the story, calls me aside and says to me, in my bag, not only I managed to hide talit and tefillin, I also have 2 matzot. Immediately, we take some chairs and benches and we turn them into a place to do a Seder, and we sit together and we start singing the Haggadah as much as we can remember, and we sing the Hallel, and a couple of people joined us, and we really were carried away by the enthusiasm that we have 2 matzot and we could celebrate Pesach somehow. This is a testimony from Janovska. A year later, 1943, Pesach is celebrated on the Warsaw Ghetto. 1943 is the ghetto uprising. The Germans knew exactly what the dates of Jewish festivals are. They made an effort, an active and successful effort, to harass the Jews on those festival days, and they decided to finish up the Warsaw Ghetto on the first day of Pesach. But they were surprised because the Jews defended themselves this time. This is the famous rebellion, the famous battle of the Warsaw Ghetto. And in the midst of the battle, the Jews are celebrating the night of the Seder. Tuvia Bushlikovsky was one of the commanders of the rebellion, and he found himself at that night in the flag of Rabbi Eliezer Yitzchak Meisel, Rabbi Meisel. And he's telling us the following story. He survived the Holocaust and he told us the story as follows. The house is a chaos. All over the floor, articles and things are running around, everything is broken. all the glasses, all the windows are broken. During the day when the people, the residents of the house were hiding in the cellar, the house became a complete mess. But in the center of the main room, one big table standing on its own, covered nicely and ready for Seder. Unbelievable. We are reading the Haggadah when around us there are sounds of shooting and explosions which carried on for the entire night. When the Seder was finished, the rabbi walked me to the door and gave me a few matzah to give to my fighters, to the people who fight with me. And he said, if it was the first night of Pesach, we have 2 nights. If we are still alive tomorrow, we'll meet again. And bring Tzviya with you. Tzviya Lovatkin was a famous fighter in the ghetto. So the rabbi told Tuvia, bring Tzviya with you. And indeed he says the following night we came back to celebrate the Seder again in the midst of fighting with Rabbi Mazel. Rabbi Mazel was murdered, was killed in the ghetto a few days later after this. There were times when Jews could not celebrate Pesach by eating matzah because there was no matzah to be found. What you see here is a piece of paper, a prayer that the rabbis in the Kobna ghetto, the rabbis in Belgium concentration camp. It's a prayer that they composed. And this prayer says as follows. Our Father in heaven, it is clear and known to you that it is our desire to do thy will and celebrate Passover by eating matzah and observing the chametz prohibition. But for that, our souls saddened, that the enslavement hinders us and we are unable and we are in a mortal danger. We are prepared and ready to fulfill your mitzvah, and it's a quote from the Torah from the book of Leviticus, chapter 18, verse 5, and live by them. I'll explain this in a moment. Let's finish the text. And not to die by them, and to watch the warning of, again a quote from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 9, beware of yourself and greatly beware for your soul. We therefore pray to you that you will keep us alive, sustain us, and redeem us soon to observe your laws and worship you with a wholesome heart. Amen. There is a mitzvah to eat matzah on Pesach, right? There is a negative mitzvah not to eat chametz. There is also a mitzvah to stay alive. In the book of Leviticus, and live by them. God gave us Torah and mitzvot, not that we die. He gave us Torah and mitzvot that we live by them. So in this prayer, the rabbis are saying, we don't have any matzah to eat. We only have chametz. We will eat the chametz because we want to live. Because God, you want us to live. You don't want us to die. And you also want us, and this is the second quotation from the book of Deuteronomy, beware of yourself and greatly beware for your soul. You have to take care of yourself. You know, keeping good health is not optional. It's a law, it's a commandment in the Torah. So the rabbis has composed this prayer saying, we eat chametz because we want to stay alive, and we hope to stay alive, so next year we will be able to do the proper mitzvah of Pesach, not eating chametz, but eating matzah. Here's another picture of the celebration of the Seder of Pesach in a ghetto in Dobrowoli in Poland. Another story about observing the Seder, told by Rabbi Sinai Adler. Rabbi Adler was born in Prague. In 1943, he's been transported to Terezin, and from there he was transported to to Auschwitz, and from there to Mauthausen. He survived the death march. He was liberated in May 1945 and made Aliyah to Israel. He lived in Israel. And he tells us the following story about the end of the war, almost the end of the war, in the camp of Mauthausen. It was the first Passover that I had to celebrate in a concentration camp. Last Pesach we were still in Terezin ghetto, when we could celebrate the Pesach with the family. Even that Pesach in Terezin was very strange, because we couldn't even turn on the light, and we had only one candle. So we did the Seder before actually night fell. But I was still with my parents, and there were a few matzot on the table, and we had tea mixed with jam instead of wine. But the Seder in Mauthausen was very different. After the evening roll call, and before we were put into the barracks to sleep, we had some time. So I asked one of the young men to take a walk with me in the camp. And while we walked, we recited by heart parts from the Haggadahs as much as we could remember them. That was a most strange Seder. We didn't have matzot, we did not have wine, we did not have the festive meal, we did not have the family. It was a night, it was a Seder done by walking. Nothing else. Just by walking. Our bodies were enslaved, but our spirit, they could not break our spirit. This is testimony by Rabbi Adler. A very special Seder was made by the orphan girls in the orphanage of the Vilna ghetto, Vilnius. The story goes like this. In our house, we had a big pack of sheets, which those who were murdered in Pona was an execution site outside of Vilnius. And those who were murdered in Vilnius, the property were left behind. The Germans confiscated, stole it, and some sheets were left behind, and the Jews picked them up. So the girls from the orphanage took those big sheets, and with colors they painted big, nice pictures on the topics of the stories of the Haggadah, the 10 plagues, and so on. And they hanged them on walls for decoration. The cook, Mrs. Weintraub, which was the mother of the orphanage manager, managed to prepare some nice special food made of black beans and frozen potatoes. The girls prepared invitations written in handwriting. They decorated them nicely with pictures and sent them to public officials of the education and culture institutions of the ghetto. At the time, the Germans still allowed some sort of a Jewish education and culture of the ghetto. At night, we sat together around the tables. The children, the girls of the orphanage. When I talk about girls of orphanage, these are girls that their families were murdered by the Germans. So the girls of the orphanage and those guests that they invited. Their room was clean, brightly lighted, and the impression was very, very strong. And all the guests were very impressed. We started to sing, we read and sang parts of the Haggadah, we drank 4 cups of sweet tea, because there was no wine, and 4 little girls asked the 4 questions, Ma nishtana. And here is, we're almost at the end, and I'd like to share with you 2 very amazing testimonies from the observance of Pesach, just to finish up. Okay, this story told by Emily Yakubovich. Emily Yakubovich was born in Germany. In 1936, her father, who was a rabbi, was appointed a rabbi of the synagogue in Paris, so it was a good opportunity for him to run away from Germany, and find a job somewhere else. But of course, Germany occupied south of France. She lost her family, all the family was murdered, and she found a hiding place with 4 other children in a cellar at a farmhouse of a good-hearted French farmer. And she's telling the following story. One day, one of us looked through the window. The window was very high near the ceiling. And he noticed that the sun is shining and the sky are completely blue. A few days before that, one of us saw some green grass growing out of the frozen land. We did not have a calendar. We did not have any time estimation, but we assumed that the weather is changing and spring is coming. As you know, Pesach is to be celebrated on springtime. So we thought perhaps we are getting near Passover, near Pesach. They didn't have a calendar. The following morning when the farmer came with our breakfast, we asked him, will he be willing to give us tomorrow the basket when he brought down the basket into the cellar with a little bit of flour, a little bit of water, a paper, and a match. 2 days later we got a little bottle of water from him, but we had to wait a few days for the flour because it was not easy even for him to come by. After that we got the paper and the match. So we waited a few more days until we noticed that the sun is shining and the sky are blue for a whole day, not just for an hour. And we decided that we're going to celebrate Pesach, even though we don't really know the date. To make up this special festive feeling, we decided to exchange clothes with each other. So we have the feeling that we're wearing something new. Most people get a new suit for Pesach or a new shirt or something new for Pesach. They didn't have anything new, so it's a swap with each other. And that night, before night, we baked our matzah. We had no idea how to do that. So we took the little bit